Hi there, students. It's Ms. Zhang. I am sorry I can't be there today. Two of my tennis players made it to the semifinals, so I am watching them and helping coach them through, trying to see if they can go to state. So I have this video for you. Please, 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 if I ask you to pause the video and do something, can you please do it? I'm not asking for much. I know it's easy to just kind of let the video play, but I want to kind of simulate this lesson as if I were actually there. So, um, please go ahead and do that. Right now, I'd like you to pause this video and download our notes for today. Guys, I just realized that when I recorded the audio for the next couple clips, um, my stylus is really loud when I click things. I'm so sorry that the audio kind of sucks, but at least you can hear me. Um, sorry. Okay, so for today we are starting our new unit on angles and angle pairs mostly. So yeah, it's a lot of vocabulary and it's a lot of relationship connecting. So if you like vocabulary, this is going to be one of your favorite units. If you don't, sorry, but a lot of geometry is vocabulary for those of you who don't like it, unfortunately. So we're going to start off with some basics. We already have talked about this word congruent. Congruent means it's figures with the same size and same shape. We already talked about congruent segments being like the same length. But today we're mostly going to be talking about congruent angles just in general. I don't know if I'm going to do a drawing, but the symbol for congruent looks like this. So it's like a little wavy line with an equals on top. I'm pretty sure y'all know what an angle is, but an angle definition, a figure formed by two sides with a common endpoint. So an angle looks something like this. We've got this common endpoint here, and it kind of goes a couple different ways. Let's say that common endpoint is M. We could call this angle M. This kind of L-y shaped thing, this is the angle symbol. Oh gosh. Angle. Trying to make quotes. I'm just going to keep going. If you need to pause the video at any time, just pause it so you can catch up. Vertex. The word vertex we're going to use quite a bit, and it's actually pretty important because it's how you name an angle. So the vertex is the common endpoint where the two sides of that angle meet. So this M right here, that's the vertex. And the reason why it's important is that it helps us to actually name angles. So when we're naming an angle, the middle letter is going to be the vertex. So for example, I know up in this picture there's only one letter, but most of the time, guys, there will be lots of letters. B, X, M. Why did I use those letters? I don't know. So when we name an angle like this right here, we're naming that angle. We can just say angle X, but a lot of times we're going to be dealing with angles that are connected like this right here. So we've got lots of different angles that we could be choosing from. And so we need a more specific way of naming the angle. And so we're going to use that vertex letter, that has to be the middle letter in the name. So the way that we would name this angle right here is we would say it's angle BXM or angle MXB. As long as X, the vertex, is in the middle, that's what we care about. Okay. The M and the B tell us kind of the pathing of the angle. So for example, we could path it from left to right. We could path it from right to left, MXB. So I'd love you guys to practice with the naming the angles. So there is a GIM kit in Schoology in the folder. You probably already saw it when you were downloading this. So I'd like you to take, 5 minutes, pause this video here, and then play that game for about 5 minutes. All right? if you play for longer than 5 minutes, you're going to run out of time for everything else. So please limit yourself to 5 minutes. All right, go ahead and pause. We'll return when you guys come back. Okay, so in this next part, guys, what I'd love for you to do is to pause the video after each vocabulary word. What we're going to do is we're going to look at some of these vocab words like adjacent, complementary. We're going to look at them in terms of examples and non-examples. And so this first one, adjacent, I'm giving you 4 examples of what adjacent angles are. Now remember, we're looking at angle pairs, so angles together. So I want you to look and see what is the relationship of adjacent angles, and then look at the non-examples and see what are not examples of adjacent angles. And I'd love for you to pause the video right now, talk with somebody next to you about what you think adjacent means, and maybe jot it down over here. I am going to go over the real definition, but I want you to actually think about it first. Like, think about, what do all of these have in common, and what makes these not adjacent, right? That's the one thing. You can talk about what makes these adjacent and what makes these not adjacent. Okay, so I'll pause the video right here. Talk with somebody around you. Talk about what you think adjacent means, maybe jot down some notes, and then when you come back and play the video, we'll talk about what the actual definition is, all right? Okay, so after talking with the person next to you, or at least thinking about it on your own, hopefully you were able to come up with something for adjacent. But here's what adjacent means. It means angles are adjacent if they are angles that are next to each other. Now we could just say next to each other, but then why aren't these adjacent, right? They're next to each other, kind of, right? So we could say they're next to each other, but they are technically angles with a common vertex. They have the same vertex and share a side. So if you look at it, these angles right here, they share a side, but they don't have that common vertex. Angle 1's vertex is down here, angle 2's vertex is up here. This one right here, the angle B beta is over here. These ones have a common vertex, but they don't share a side. Here's are the 2 sides of this angle, and the 2 sides, they don't have a common side. All right. These ones don't even have a common vertex down here. So that's technically what adjacent means. Okay, so now I want you to do the same thing for complementary. Pause the video here, think about it, or please, I would love for you to talk to somebody around you about what makes these angles complementary and why aren't these ones complementary. Okay, ready, set, go. Okay, if you hopefully paused the video and now you're back, hopefully you guys realized that complementary angles are 2 angles that add up to 90 degrees. They can be next to each other like this. They can be adjacent like this. They could both have, as long as both the numbers add up to 90 degrees, that's all that matters. Now, if you look over here at this one over here, it doesn't actually have any numbers, but because it has this little square here, we know that it makes a 90-degree angle. So even if it doesn't have numbers, if you see that little square, it definitely means that it's complementary. Okay. All right. Oops, sorry. I'm probably writing that down still. Okay, supplementary. I want you to do the same thing. Pause the video here. Talk with your table mate or your partner or whoever you're talking to. Come up with a definition. Ready, set, go. All right, after coming back, hopefully you've now seen the relationship. Supplementary angles are 2 angles that add up to 180 degrees. Now, sometimes students get complementary and supplementary mixed up. And so I do have a trick for you. I'll talk about that on Wednesday when I see you guys next. But for now, I don't think you need to memorize it. But eventually, you are going to have to know the difference between complementary and supplementary. It's pretty important. 2 vocab words. The 2 meanings are a little bit different. They're kind of the same. All right, now take a look at this one right here, linear pair. This one, I'm going to tell you guys right now, this is the one everybody always forgets, but it's the one that always comes back in like future units. Okay, so this is one of the important ones. The ones above are important, but they're more about vocab words. This linear pair comes back a whole bunch. And so, pause the video here, talk about it with your partner, or think about it in your brain. What makes these a linear pair, and what makes these ones not linear pairs? Okay? Now this one is a little bit trickier to see, maybe as somebody who is trying to figure this out for the first time. But what we know about linear pairs are that they are definitely next to each other, so they are adjacent, but they also make a straight line. You notice that. Like these two angles right here and here, they make that straight line if you look at them together. Same thing here, these angles make a straight line. Sometimes, and a lot of times actually, guys, you'll see me drawing linear pair with a little half circle. Okay, I like to show that it's a straight line, and then that it's that angle split into two, it's like a half circle. I like to draw the arc so that makes it look like a half circle. I'm gonna say hello to Paco. I don't know if you heard him. He's here now, the cat. Okay, so here's what we're gonna write. Two angles that are adjacent and form a straight line, which makes sense because it's called linear. Linear has the word line in it. So here's why this one, a lot of people think this is linear usually, but because we are looking at this angle and this angle, those angles are not adjacent. They don't share a side, so that's why this one's not linear. This one up here, if we're talking about these two angles, those two angles are not adjacent as well, like this one and this one, not adjacent. These ones are down here, these ones are adjacent, but they don't make a straight line. See how it bends? Okay. And then this one, hopefully nobody was confused about. All right, the last one is vertical angles. So vertical angles are over here. These ones are not vertical. So again, talk about it with your partners. Talk about what makes these vertical and why aren't these other ones vertical. Okay, what do you think? Okay, so we're back. Hopefully you paused and talked about it. These right here are vertical, and these also are vertical. Vertical. One of the things usually students will say is that they're angles that are across from each other, which is pretty good, like as a in general definition. But then we get to something like this, and even though these are kind of across from each other, they're not vertical. And so I kind of want to make our definition of across from each other, make it a little bit better. So I'm going to say they are two angles. Oh, actually, I'll say two non-adjacent angles that are formed by intersecting lines. Are formed by intersecting lines. So for example, that's why these are not vertical, because this isn't a line, but this line does not keep going. Do you guys see that? This right here is not actually a line. It's an angle. So we've got to have two straight lines like this. One straight line, two straight lines, and then it's the angles that are not adjacent, so they're across from each other. So that's what makes it vertical. A lot of students also might think this is vertical because they are kind of across from each other. But again, two straight lines. So here's one straight line, but this line does not keep going, which is why these are not vertical. These ones are next to each other, so that's why it's not vertical. Cool. All right, the last little bit is just some examples, and then the rest of the time will be for you guys to work on the assignment, okay? So in this, down here, we're just talking about if these, you're just identifying whether these are adjacent, linear, vertical, complementary, or supplementary, and noting that some may have more than one answer. Also, I forgot to write this in the directions, and some may be not none. Some may be none. Okay. So if we look at number one, right away I see, oh, we've got this angle and angle Z. They have a common endpoint, and they're right next to each other, so that's definitely adjacent. Are they linear? No, because those two angles together don't make a straight line. I know that there is a straight line there. Some people say, oh, Ms. Zhang, there's a straight line. But yeah, I get it. But this angle Y and Z are only these ones. That doesn't make a straight line. Not vertical. Remember, vertical and adjacent are mutually exclusive. Like, you can't be both because it can't be adjacent if it's vertical. Complementary, we don't know any angle measures, so we don't know for sure if it's 90 degrees. Supplementary, we don't know for sure if it's 180, so I'm just going to leave it at adjacent. Choo-choo. Okay, next one. Number two, we've got Y and Z. They are adjacent. They're next to each other. Now let's see if there's anything else. Are they linear? Well, there is a straight line, but again, Y and Z together don't make that straight line. Vertical, no. Can't be adjacent and vertical at the same time. Complementary. Now, remember, that's where they add up to 90 degrees. And supplementary is where they add up to 180. I am going to go ahead and say that these are complementary. Here's why. I see this right angle here, which means that this side also has to be a right angle. Okay, that's just something that I'm teaching you in the example right now so that you know if you see a right angle here, it will also be on the other side too. So these, yes, these are complementary. Even though we don't know even though we don't know what the angle measures are, we see this little right angle, which tells us that it's going to be a 90-degree angle. Okay. All right, number three, we've got angles. They're formed by intersecting lines. They're across from each other. That's vertical. Not linear. Again, vertical and linear can't happen at the same time. And we don't know any angle measures. They might be complementary. If they were both 45, then they would be complementary, but we don't know for sure. So, done. All right, number four. This is kind of that example that I was showing you up here, like up this. These ones are not adjacent because they have two different, no common sides. They're not linear because can't be linear if they're not adjacent. They're not vertical because they're not formed by two intersecting lines. We've got one line here, but the other one would go straight through this way. We don't know any angle measures, so this is going to be the none. None. I really hope you can hear my daughter talking to herself in the crib right now. I'm trying to get her to nap, and she's just not having it. All right, let's see, anything else down here? I think that's it. Oh, there you go, and look at that. It's a pretty short assignment for you. If you have any questions, again, we're gonna be talking about these words on Wednesday as well. We're gonna take it a little bit farther, but this is pretty much it. If you have any questions, feel free to email me or you can wait until Wednesday. All right, thanks a lot, guys. Especially if you participated in the discussions with somebody next to you, I really appreciate that. I can't force you to do some of these things, but if you did, it really does mean a lot more, I think, if you talked with somebody about it than if you'd kind of just kept to yourself. And I get it. Some people are like me, and they'd rather just do it by themselves. I was like that too, but sometimes, pushing yourself out of your comfort zone might be better. All right, sometimes. Okay, well, I will see you guys on Wednesday.